two rabbis, Rabbi Chia bar Zarnuki and Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzedek. The two of them, Havu ka'azle la'iber shana ba'asya. They went out of Eretz Yisrael, which is already a problem, because ideally they should not be intercalating the month or the year outside Eretz Yisrael. Okay? However, Shana Ba'asya, I don't think this is really Asia, okay? But it was a community outside the land of Israel. Okay? What happens? Paga Baho Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish met them. Itfil Bahadayu. And he decided, I want to join with them. Okay, why? Because he wants to see how the intercalation of the month of the year was carried out, especially in this unique situation if they were going outside the land of Eretz Yisrael. Because remember, we learned elsewhere that normally the Nasi had to dictate to the rabbis to do so, okay, in Eretz Yisrael. Okay? So what happens? Amar, he says, Reish Lakish, Izil Echzei Hechi Avdei Uvda. I'll go and I will see how they carry out this deed, this activity. Chazie, he saw Lahahu Gavra. Okay, so so traveling with them, he sees in this area outside Eretz Yisrael, okay, we assume, what? A certain person, the Kakariv, who is plowing. Amar lehen, and he said to these two rabbi friends that traveled, colleagues, Kohen v'choresh. That man has got to be a Kohen, and he's plowing, which should be forbidden during Shvi'is, right? Amrulo, they said to him, perhaps the following, Yechol lomar agiston ani. He might say, I'm simply an employee of the person who is owns the field, and therefore it's not an issue for me to work the land at this time. Okay? So that's pretty ani b'tocho. What happens? Two, and furthermore, says the Gemara, Chazia lahahu gavra. Later on, he sees a second person, dahavu kasach, who is pruning be karmo. Okay, pruning in the vineyards, right? Amar lehen. So he said again to them, Kohen v'zamar. That fellow must be a Kohen, and he's trimming, he's pruning. Amar le. And they answered him, Yechol amar. It's possible he might say to us, La'akel beit habad ani tzarich. I'm just trimming some branches in order to make some kind of a net for the olive press. Because if it wasn't a tight pruning, if it was just trimming off some branches to put underneath the olive press, that would help keep the sediment and the pure olive oil from mixing. Okay? What happens? Okay? So now Amar lehem, he said back to them, Reish Lakish, Alev Yodea im le'akel. Okay? Im kalut. The heart knows, in other words, does this person really know whether he's simply trimming to make a net, or is he trimming to do some sort of perverse activity, a transgression, a sin? And if you're using Art Scroll, look at 26A2, note number 14 for further details. Okay? Hey, Amar Laho Beresha. Okay, so the Gemara asks, which incident, okay, did he talk to them initially, at the outset? Ilema ha kamaita. If we say it was the first incident of the plower, right? Amar laho beresha, that's what he said first. Hanami lemro agiston ani betocho. Why then couldn't they have said in regards to the pruning situation the same kind of answer, that he's simply an employee, right? Ella ha. But in this case, Amarle, they said to him, Beresha v'hadar Amarla hach. So in other words, the pruning incident actually came first, and the plower came second. Okay? Maishna. Okay, so now we ask further. Remember, he said that said in each case, the person he suspected to be a Kohen. Okay? Why a Kohen exactly? Maishna Kohen. Why did they teach it as a Kohen? Mishum de Chashide Ashvi'i. Because they were suspect about not observing the Shemitah year properly. Why? Another story. Ditznan, as taught again in a Mishnah. In this case, Se'ah Trum'ah, we have a measurement, a Se'ah of Trum'ah, Shenaflala Me'ah Se'in Shel Shvi'it, that fell into 100 Se'ah of Shemitah, of seventh year produce. What happens? Ta'aleh. It would be nullified in a sense. Pachot mikan yikavu. But if it's any less than that, one in 100, okay, as right, you must allow that entire amount to rot, says the Gemara. Vahavinin ba, and we discussed this and asked about the following: Amayi karvu. Why then should it have to rot? Okay, namely, let's say Yemachru the Kohen, let it be sold to a Kohen, b'demei truma, okay, at the value of truma, which was always going to be a lower value because there was a smaller base, okay, of purchase, right? Chutz midemei otamea, with the exception of the amount of that same, okay, say otasea, that the particular amount of truma. Va'amar Rav Chia, says Rav Chia, Mishmei De'ula, in the name of Ula. Zoto merit, this comes to tell us this incident. Okay, Nechshadu Kohanim Ashri'it, that Kohanim were suspect about whether or not how strict they would be dealing with the produce of Shri'it, of seventh year. Now, the two rabbis who kept getting these questions from Reish Lakish, you can imagine what their opinion is going to be of him, as the Gemara tells us. Amru Tarudahudin. Okay, this fellow is very argumentative, and that's probably putting it mildly when they're saying about him, as we're going to see shortly. Okay, who this one? Kimatu Lahatam, and when they reached the location where they were going to have to meet, carry out why they went, right, in Asya, right? What did they do? Sliku le'igra, they went up to the roof, to the second story, okay? Shalfuha ledarga matute, and they pulled up the ladder behind them, okay, so that he couldn't climb up, couldn't come up, okay? So what did he do, Reish Lakish? Atalekame de Rabbi Yochanan. He came before Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, back in Eretz Yisrael, right? Amarle, and he said to them, B'nei Adam, achashudim al hashvi'it, sherim la'aber shana, are individuals who are suspect in regarding to how they treat, I'm going to say, the Shemitah year. Are they eligible? Are they appropriate to intercalate the year? So he's really saying something, questioning the authority and the power of these two other colleagues. Hadar, Reish Lakish changes his mind and then says to himself, Amar lo kashali, maybe I shouldn't be so tough in this situation, right? Difficult. Because I'm reminded, which we saw in the Gemara earlier, about those three herders, okay, who were talking about the season. And that, okay, and they said, well, maybe that was what motivated rabbis to intercalate the year. And then the Gemara came back and told us, no, it was they had done their own calculations, but their comments reinforced the idea that they needed to intercalate at that point. Okay? So what happens? Those three herders, right, of bakar, of larger animals, of cattle. V'Rabbanan achushubanaihu samuch, and the rabbis had done their own calculations. V'Hadar, and then Reish Lakish thought about it again, and he reconsidered. And Amar, and he said, Lo dami. No, this situation is incomparable to that one. Why? Hatam there, right? Hador himenu rabbanan. The rabbis came back and they believed them. Va'avruha lahahushata. And they intercalated the month, the year, okay, really a month into that year, at that particular time. Hacha, but here, in this case, Kesha Risha'imhu. This seems like a group, a confederacy of wicked people. But Kesha Risha'im, Eino men haminyan. And we say in a quote that we're going to get to momentarily, that any group, confederation of wicked people can't be relied upon. Okay? They're not part of the, in particular, part of the majority. Now, says, okay, so Reish Lakish is calling his two colleagues. Yeah, right? So what happens? So now the Gemara wants to say, hold on a second. Okay? What's the situation? Well, notice now Rabbi Yochanan's response. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Da'aka. This is disgraceful that you're calling your colleagues. Okay? And remember, we had a whole situation here previously in a Gemara that we learned together that we said that the attitude among colleagues in Eretz Israel was a very good attitude, respectful attitude. It was the attitude among those in Bavel that was what? Pernicious. Oh yes, thank you. Okay. So what happens? Now the two guys, the other two rabbis, hear what the story of what Reish Lakish had said about them. Okay, so the Gemara goes on. Ki atu lekame de Rabbi Yochanan. When these other two rabbis came before Rabbi Yochanan, what happens? Right? Amrule, they said to him, Kari lan ro'e bakar. He called us that we were no better off than cattle herders. Velo amar le mar velo mide. And the master didn't say anything. You didn't reprimand him for putting us down or worse. Okay? Notice now Rabbi Yochanan's response. Amar lahu, he said back to them, Ve'i kari lechu ro'ei tzon. And if he had called you shepherd herders, which we saw was even worse, okay? Right? My aminale, what would I have said to him? So now the Gemara says, okay. But notice the phrase that he used, he called them a confederacy of wicked people. Where did that term even come into existence, that you'd call them okay? Right? So the Gemara tells us now another whole story to explain that. Shavna happened to be a government a government official, okay, in the administration of King Chizkiyahu, okay? But he had his own, we'll call it for the moment, political party, his own followers, which were not necessarily advocates of Chizkiyahu either, as the Gemara is going to tell us. Shavna hava darish, batlei sari vavuta. Okay, Shavna would expound to 130,000 individuals. Okay, Chizkiah hava darish bechad sar ravuta. Chizkiah would expound to 110,000 individuals. Ki ata Sancheriv, and when King Sancheriv, okay, who was the king then of Syria, came, Vatsar ala Yerushalayim, and he made a siege of Jerusalem. What happened? Katav Shivna Pitka. Shivna wrote a note, Shada Bagira, attached it to an arrow, and shot the arrow to the camp of Sancheriv. And by the way, Art Scroll 26A3, note number 32, okay, goes into more detail than I'm going to go into now. Okay, otherwise you can look at it in 2 Kings chapter 18 and Isaiah chapter 32. Okay, what happens? Shavna v'siato hishlimu. Shavna and his associates want to make peace with you. This was the note. Chizkiah v'siato lo hishlimu. But Chizkiah, the king, and his associates do not want to make peace with you, because Chizkiah had advised the people, we need to trust in Hashem, that he will protect us under these circumstances. Okay? Shenamah, as it says right in Tehillim, Ki hine harishaim yidrechun keshet konanu hatzam al yeter haveka mistafe Chizkiah. Okay, that again, dealing with this message that he had sent, okay, pulling back the bow, sending the arrow through, etc. And as a result, Havaka Mistafe Chizkiah. Chizkiah was very distressed and fearful as to what would happen. He thought as follows, Amar, this is what Chizkiah, Dilma, Chas v'shalom niti'ah da'ateh the Kadosh Baruch Hu, but Taruba, that perhaps the Kadosh Baruch Hu would follow the majority rule, namely that we should make peace, and therefore what's going to happen? Right? Kevan deruba mim sarei. Okay? Because since the majority seem to be willing to surrender, I'm going to use that word for the moment. In hunami mimsare, perhaps we too should surrender. Okay? Ba Navi, comes the prophet Isaiah. Va'amarlo, and he's excuse me, and he says to Chizkiah, Lo tamrun kesher l'kol asher yomer ha'am hazeh. Don't follow this. I'm going to say KNOT, not, and a term like this group, this knot of people. Okay? Don't follow them. Kesher klomar, when we mean this group, this knot of people, kesher risha'im hu, or kesher risha'im enomin haminyan. They're a group, again, of wicked people, and the group of wicked people is not part of to be taken into account. Isaiah is saying that about Yeshavna and his crew. Okay? All right, who wanted to make peace. Okay, under those circumstances. So what happens? Halach lachtzov lo kever. Shavna then was assuming that if he makes peace with Sancheriv, he's going to, that Sancheriv would install him as the king. And okay, his puppet, but install him in that manner. So what did he do? Lachtzov lo kever b'kivrei Beit David. He went to dig himself a grave, okay, in the special burial area associated with the house of David, with the monarchy of David. Banavi, again comes the prophet Isaiah, Va'amarlo, and said to him, Malach po, umilach po. What business do you have here, basically? Ki chatzavta lach po kever, that you're digging a grave for yourself there. Hine Hashem mataltalacha taltala gever. Hashem is going to cause you to wander the way a person wanders around. Anyway, Amar Rav, and Rav said, okay, so what does he mean here? Okay, by saying wandering, okay, just a second. Okay, so what's going to happen to our here in this situation in a second. Following is going to happen as we continue. Okay. Amar Rav says, Rav, what was meant by this phrase tiltula that the Gavra kashi made the itata? Okay, when Isaiah said he's going to become a wanderer. Okay, that the wandering of a man is more difficult than the wandering of a woman, because if a woman is wandering on, people will have more rachmanis for her as opposed to a man. Okay, and then it continues in the text, v'itcha ita. Okay, furthermore, it'll be a slow situation, right? Okay, Amar Rabbi Yossi, so Rabbi Yossi b'Rabbi Chanina, Melamed sheparcha bo tzara'a. It tells us that Shavna suddenly got leprosy, right? Kativ, and it's written, Hacha ve'itcha yata, ukativ hatam, and it's written there, va'al shapam ya'ate. Okay, the Zereshava of the words itcha and yata, okay, that he would get this illness up to his lips, so to speak. In other words, almost his entire body. Further, another part of the pasuk, Sanuf yitzanafcha, Sanafa kedur al haaretz. Again, once more, saying this situation, Rechavat yadayim v'gomer. So what's going to happen? Tana, it was taught in the Mishnah, a Braita, I'm sorry. Hu bikesh ne'afach vodo lekalon. What he wanted, what he sought to gain, all right? Hu bikesh kalon beit adonav lefi. Okay, he wanted what would be result in the destruction, the downfall of Beit Adonav, okay, of the house of Hashem, of our master, okay, of his master, okay, lefichach, therefore, nehafach kvodo lekalon, therefore his glory, his honor, that of Shavna, went to destruction. What came, as the Gemara is telling us, ki hava nafi, when he went out of the Jerusalem, out of the environs of the city, right? Ihu ata, along then came Gabriel acharei, the angel Gabriel came down from behind Shavna, and what did it do? Ledasha ba'afe misharaite, and it closed the gates of the city behind him, in front of his chevra, in front of his all of his group of associates. Okay, so what happens is we go to the top of the next Amud. Right? Okay, Amrule. So he comes alone into the camp of Sennacherib. Right, Sennacherib's men say to him then, right? Misharitayich, your whole ensemble, okay? Heicha, where are they? Where's all your crew, so to speak? Okay? Amar, he said to them, Hadrube, they recanted from me. In other words, they turned their backs, they didn't come. Okay? Amrule, they said to him, Imkain, achochika mechikait ben, are you mocking us? Are you making fun of us? What did they do to him? Nikbuhu be'akavav, they made holes in his heels, right? V'tla'uhu bin znavei susim, and they tied his legs, okay, to the tails of their horses. V'hayu megorerin oto al hakotzim va'al habarkanim, and they rode the horses, dragging him over all sorts of thistles and all sorts of thorns. Okay? Amar Rabbi Elazar. Therefore, what happens? Another comment on Shavna. Shavna Baal Hana'ahaya. Shavna was a pleasure seeker. And Art Scroll has on, And this here, note number one on 26b1, note number one. And okay. And again, more detail and includes what Rashi suggests was inappropriate sexual behavior. Okay? Kativ hacha, and it's written here. How do we know that he indulged in certain behaviors? Lech ba'el hasochein hazeh. Go to the sochein, in this case, treasurer. Okay, this, right? Uktiv, but it's also written elsewhere. Hatam, as we saw, utehilo sochenet, and she was right supposed to be somebody to warm him. V'omer, and it says, okay, okay, so that's one example to try to show that Shavna indulged in all sorts of sexual gratification. Okay. Furthermore, another example from a different pasuk. Ki hashatot yehersun, right? Yeharesun, right? Sadik ma pa'al. Okay. When the shatot or shasos are destroyed, okay, what is righteous to do? Rav Yehuda v'Rabbi Ena, the two of them, gave an explanation. Chad Amar, Elu Chizkiah v'Siato Nehersin. Says one, okay, were it such that Chizkiyahu and his associates would be destroyed. Sadiq Ma'pa'al. What does it mean that the righteous, namely the Kadosh Baruch Hu, is doing? Okay, and then the other V'chadamar, and the other's explanation for Shasos was Ilu Beit Hamikdash Yaharas, were it such that the Beit Hamikdash would be destroyed. Sadiq Ma'pa'al, what would be the righteous one? Again, the Kadosh Baruch Hu be doing. Ula Amar, says Ula here, Elu Machshavotav. When we say the term Shatzos, what are we referring to? These are the thoughts, the designs, the plans, Sheloto Rasha, of that wicked one, namely Shavna. Okay? And none nehersot tzaddik mapa'al. Okay, that it doesn't destroy the righteous one. So what was the situation? What happened? What's the explanation of these three different suggestions? Bishlema lemanda amar, that the shasos elu machshavotav, that these were his thoughts, his designs, his plans. Shelo Torah Shah. That explanation makes sense. Why? Hainu dichtiv, because later elsewhere a pasuk says, Ki hashatos yehersun. Okay, that shows us were destroyed. Ulaman da amar Beit Hamikdash, and the one who explains it not as the plans, but as the shasos associated with Beit Hamikdash. Why? Nami, that also seems to make some sense. Why? Tznan, because we have a Mishnah that comes to tell us, Even Haita Sham Miyamot Nevi'im Harishonim, there was a stone, okay, there, namely in Yerushalayim, the Beis Hamikdash, actually below the Beis Hamikdash, right? And what was called the Even Shtia, right? Ushtia Haita Nikret, and it was called the Shtia. And Shatos and Shtia have this parallel lashon. Okay? Ela lemanda amar chizkia v'siato. But according to the one who said it was regarding Chizkia and his associates, hecha eshkechan sadiki. How do we know that I can find here that it referred to the righteous? The ikru shatot, that they might be called shatos. Dichtiv, because it's written, Ki Lashem Mitzuke Aritz V'yashet Alehem Tevel. Okay, again, comment to that. That was the right. That's right from the situation that they were the strength of the earth, so to speak. V'yabayet ema mehacha. And if you want, I could base it on the following idea. Palya etza hegdil toshia. Okay, that there too wisdom is significant. Okay, and once more, Amar Rabbi Chanan, Lama Nikra Shma Toshia. Why is wisdom used in the phrase Toshia? Mipnei Shehi Mateshet Kocho Shel Adam. Because it can weaken, okay, the thoughts of a man. In other words, when a person has anxious thoughts, okay, when they think heavily on a situation, okay, it sometimes will cause them to think twice or to be unclear as to how to behave and what to do. Furthermore, Art Scroll again on 26, okay, B1 number 15 is a note to look at. Mipnei shehi meteshet kocho shel adam. Davar acher, another possible explanation of Toshia as wisdom, shenitna b'chashai mipnei hasatan. And that's where the Art Scroll note number 15 explain the reference to Satan, because wisdom is given over in a way that would not be known to Satan. Davar acher, another possible explanation, Toshia Devarim, when we talk about this is kinds of issues, Shal Tohu Shaha'olam Mishotet Alehem. That once more, that there is this concern that will drive a person in the world with problems. Amar Ula, says Ula, Machshava Mo'elet, Afilu Divrei Torah. Okay, that thought can cause, let's say, a sage, okay, to forget, to have qualms about his Torah learning. As it said, Mipri machshavot arumim v'lo te'asena yedehem toshia. Okay. Amar Rava, says Rava, Im asukin lishma. He disagrees that certain qualms will impact on the Torah learning. So Rabba's response is, but if the scholar, asukim lishma, is truly focused in his learning and is learning it for lishma, without, for its own value and purpose, and not for anything else, einamo elet, it doesn't cause a loss. Shne'amar, as it says, Rabot machshavot b'leiv ish, va'atzat Hashem hi takum. Etzah sheyesh b'devar Hashem hi takum le'olam. Okay? That true Torah learning will stay with a person forever, and other words, and will not cause them to.
I think there's a Gemara that says that people who learn Torah get smarter with age, and those who don't learn Torah get dumber with age. I think it says in Shabbos.
Okay. As we continue now, it's a new piece of the Gemara, but it really goes back to the subject of the dice players that we had some examples there before. Okay? So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Ematan. Rabbi Yehuda was asking the question, when do we say that dice players are ineligible? Are we saying it's only as witnesses? Or are we saying it's also both witnesses and judges? Okay? Amar Rabbi Abahu, says Rabbi Abahu, Amar Rabbi Elazar. Halacha ka Rabbi Yehuda. The law is like Rabbi Yehuda. Va'amar Rabbi Abahu, Amar Rabbi Elazar. And again, Rabbi Abahu in the name of Rabbi Elazar. Kulan srichin hachraza b'veit din. In other words, to make somebody ineligible, it must be announced publicly in the court. Okay? So the Gemara goes on, Ro'eh, but what about the example of a herder? Plige ba Rav Acha v'Ravina. About that, there was an argument between Rav Acha and Ravina. Chad amar ba'i hachraza. One said a similar proclamation must be made. Okay, v'chad amar lo ba'i hachraza. and the other said no proclamation must be made. In other words, the assumption would seem to be that a herder is always always going to be ineligible, right? Okay, so going on. Now the Gemara picks up. Bishlema lamanda amar lo ba'e hachrazah. It's understandable and acceptable according to the one who says it does not need, no proclamation is necessary. Hainu da Amar Rabbi Yehuda, that would be the reason that Rabbi Yehuda says Amar Rav in the name of Rav, Stam Ro'eh Pasul, that in general a herder is considered invalid. Right. Ella, but rather, Laman da Amar Bai Hachrazah, but according to the one who says a proclamation in the Beis Din is necessary, Mai Stam Ro'eh Pasul, how then can we understand the statement that someone says that in general a herder is invalid? Okay? So the Gemara tries to understand it. The bistama machrizinin alei. Do we say that in general we make a proclamation about him? Hahi matana. Okay, but here we have a situation where we have the example of a document that's a gift document, says the Gemara. And from this story, it should give us some sort of an answer to our question. Okay? Dahavu Chatime Ale Tarin Gazlani. And the signatures on this gift document were three individuals either suspected of thievery or known to have been involved in some sort of thievery. Savar Rav Papa Bar Shmuel La'achshura. He thought to validate the document. Daha lo achrizan alayu, because no public proclamation had been made about these individuals. Okay? Amar le Rava, however, Rava said to him, Nehi de ba'inin hachrazah begazlan de Rabbanan. Indeed, we do need a proclamation regarding anyone who's suspected of thievery from a rabbinic position. Begazlan de oraita mi ba'inin hachrazah. But do we really need a proclamation if, according to the Torah, okay, the person would be considered a thief? All right? Now, Siman, okay, mnemonic device, Devar va'ariyot ganav. Amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, Ochle davar acher psulin le'edut. Okay? Now, this particular piece of Gemara, okay, has got a number of possibilities, right? If you look at, you're using Art Scroll 26, right? B3, note number 30, okay, is the note that goes into more detail, suggesting that the phrase Dvar Acher, based on Rashi elsewhere, refers to pig. Pig.
Four. They gave tzedakah and they gave pig.
Okay, wait. That it's somebody who, okay. All right, okay. I felt that was, does that, Vishinantam gives that as well, right? Okay, I'm more comfortable personally with that explanation than the Art Scroll, but I felt it appropriate to refer to it. Okay, that anyone who is involved in such, what would you say, Avrami? Chilul Hashem in general? Okay, let's put it that way. Okay, all right, would be invalid for. Okay, would be invalid for testimony, right? Hani mili, what are we talking about here? Befarhesia, in public. Aval b'tzinia, but in private, lo. That would not be the case. And so the Gemara says, befarhesia nami lo. And maybe publicly no also. Okay, Amran, and we say, Ella de afsharle le'idzune betzina. Why? Because it's possible, we say, that he would be able to finance himself. In other words, to accept money, okay, from others. In this case, idolaters. Okay, in private. He can get money other ways private. Private, right? V'ka, right? V'ka mavaze nafshe b'farhesia. Why? Because that would publicly humiliate him, okay, in that case. Aval lo efshale, but if it's not possible for him to do this, right? Chiyutehu, okay, maybe the only reason that he's accepting money from idol worshippers or others is because he has no other livelihood. Okay? And that's the question that he's doing. Okay? Amar Rav Nachman. Says Rav Nachman, Hechashud al ha'arayot, one who is suspected of being involved in the biblically forbidden sexual relations, right? Kasher la'edut is still valid for testimony. Amar Rav Sheshet, says Rav Sheshet, Ani Mari, answer me, my master. Arba'in b'katfeh. We're going to give that person stripes. You're going to give him malchus. And you're still going to say that that person is going to be valid for testimony. Okay? V'kasher, and he's still valid. Amar Rava, says Rava. Umode Rav Nachman. It says Rava, and Rav Nachman acknowledged. Le'inyan edut isha shahu pasu. That in regards to any testimony regarding a woman, okay, he would be invalid.
This is the suspected.
The person, right, arayot person. Amar Ravina, says Ravina ve'itema Rav. And others said, it was Rav Papa that said, Lo Amran ela la'afuka. No, that dealt with a situation in order to help her escape a marriage. Aval le'iyula, but to make lit lanba, but to have her go into a marriage, okay, that is not the case. Pshita, isn't that obvious? Mahu detema, what then are you trying to tell us? Ha'adifale, okay, which that it's preferred for him. Dichtiv, why? Mayim gnuvim yimtaku, because we have a statement that says forbidden fruit is the best, so to speak. Kamashmalan comes to teach us the kama de kaima hachi, shachicha le. No, that basically we don't necessarily say that because the more she's available to him, okay, that would be better. Va'amar Rav Nachman, says Rav Nachman, Ganav Nisan v'Ganav Tishrei. If someone is a thief in the month of Nisan or in the month of Tishrei, both of them, remember, are harvest months, okay? Lo Shmei Ganav. He's not really considered a thief. Hani Mili Ba'arisa. Here we're talking about a sharecropper. V'davar ma'at. In other words, he's taking a little bit more than his fair share, and it's only a little bit more. Okay? U'b'davar shenigmara melachto. And it's such that that the produce is completely finished. All of the work on it is done. Okay? So what happens? Another story. Ikare, the Rav Zavid, the farm workers, farm laborers of Rav Zavid, Chad Ganav Kava de Sa'ave, Upasle. One stole a kav of barley, okay, and Rav Zavid invalidated him. V'chad Ganav Kivura da Ahine, Upasle. And another stole a cluster of dates, and Rav Zavid invalidated him. Okay? Now another story. Kinhu Kivurai. There was a group of grave diggers. The Kavur Nafsha B'Yom Tov Rishon Shalatzeret. And they buried a body on the first day of Shavuos, of Atzeret. Right? What happens? Shamtinu, Rav Papa. Rav Papa put them into excommunication. All right? Upasilnahu le'edut, and he invalidated them for testimony. So what happens? That says the Gemara, Va'achsharinhu Rav Huna bereda Rav Yoshua. But, I'm going to translate it, Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yoshua, revalidated them, so to speak. Amarle Rav Papa, and Rav Papa says to him, Vaharishaim ninhu, but aren't they wicked? Okay, Savre mitzvah ka'avdei. So Rav Huna could have argued, maybe they thought they were doing a mitzvah by doing the burial. V'hakameshamtina naho. But I excommunicated them, he said. I excommunicated. Shamta is actually the first level of what we would call excommunication. I like to think cherem is a stronger word for excommunication. Shamta would be a ban, okay? And the ban is that they cannot, their neighbors shouldn't have anything to do with them, people shouldn't talk with them, etc., etc. That is Shamta. Okay, right. So that's what we're going to get to in the Gemara, right? Okay, so what happens? Savre kaparaka avdelan rabbanan. Okay, maybe the rabbis thought they did atonement because why? As Rami points out, according to Rashi, that they did it the previous time, and the rabbis acted. Okay, and then what happened? That maybe they did tshuva from that previous time, and as a result, okay, now that they should be accepted again. Itmar. Okay, and it was said about them as follows, which we'll pick up tomorrow. Right? Right, etc., etc., etc. So that's where we'll stop right there on the bottom of
Very last rule.
right?
Yeah.
How come there was no arguments and fistfights today? What happened? How come everyone was so well behaved?
Where?
Here.
Not necessarily.
I even only made one quip.
What?
I only made one quip, so I wasn't a
It depends if we want to treat ourselves like the sages of Eretz Israel or the sages like Buddha.